Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to look at how to integrate node.js with Hugo, and specifically using the NPM package manager. Hugo does a lot out of the box, but there are a few things that you need to use node.js to install so you can extend Hugo's capabilities. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is follow the link below to the Git repository for the Getting Started template. And the easiest method is to download a zip folder with all of the code. So I've downloaded the repository, I've extracted it, and I'm going to open it up in Visual Studio Code. The first thing I'm going to do is open the terminal and run npm init. You need to have node.js installed to do this, and there's a link which I'll put up above so you guys can download and install everything you need to run Hugo. Once you're on npm init, it will try and guess the package name. It's based off the name of the folder or the directory, and I'm going to hit enter to keep that default. Version, I like to start at 0.1.0, but it's up to you. You can start at 1.0.0 if you like. Description, so I'm just going to put a description of the project in. Let's call this Hugo template for NPM. I'm not going to worry about entry point or test command. Git repository, it's a good idea to put the address of your Git repository here so you have a record of it. For now, I'm going to leave that blank. And it's a great idea to add some keywords. Mainly if you're going to be publishing the repository. In this case, it's not going to be published, so I'm not too worried. I'm not going to publish it through NPM, so I'm not going to worry about keywords. Author, put your name in there, especially if you're going to be publishing to NPM. And again, license for publishing to NPM. All right, let's have a look now at the configuration file. So if we go down to our new file called Package.json, we can see what has been created. Now, we're not too worried about the test script, so we're going to delete that. First thing we have to do is look at installing some dependencies. There's two types of dependencies. We've got development or dev dependencies and standard dependencies. The standard dependencies are used across both development and production, but your dev dependencies are only used when you're developing. So, for example, if you want to upload this site to Netlify, there is a setting that you can change so that Netlify will not install the dev dependencies. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a think, and if we're going to install a package which isn't used for building the website, we're going to install it as a dev dependency. So, first program we're going to install is a program that I like to use for updating my node.js packages, and it's called npm-check. So I'm going to write npm install --save-dev. That will install it as a dev dependency, and it's called npm-check. And the reason we're saving it as a dev dependency is we're never going to need to use that program on the Netlify platform. That's if you choose to use Netlify. If you're just going to be building a Hugo site on your computer and then using FTP to upload the files, it doesn't really make a difference. But we're going to do it this way anyway, so it's future compatibility. We hit enter, and NPM will download the package for you, the program, and install it at the same time. It's going to close that file so we can open it again now that it's, you'll see we've got a new dev dependency there, npm-check. Now we're going to make a script for npm-check, and this is how it works. So in our script section, we give it a name, and I'm going to call it npm-check with a colon and a space, and then we write our script. Now, if we run npm-check and a -u after it, and we save that, npm-check will be run in interactive mode. Let's give that a test. Now, luckily, there's two ways of doing it. You can type in here in your terminal, npm run npm-check, and it's going to run that script for us. And you'll see it's past the script that we wrote. and we get some feedback saying all your modules are up to date. Now it does that because the only module is npm-check and it's just been installed, so it is up to date. Now, Visual Studio Code, you can actually run your NPM scripts down here, and that's really handy. It saves you having to remember what they are. You don't have to check. You can just run them straight from there. Now, before we go ahead and install more packages, we're going to look at writing some scripts specifically for Hugo. So the first one we're going to do is dev. So we're going to write a script for when we're running Hugo's built-in development server. So the basic command is hugo server. You have to put a comma after that because there's a second line following it. The next script we're going to write, we will do build when we're building the website, and that's just Hugo. We'll put a comma after that. Then I'm going to save it, and I'm going to go down to our scripts here, and we're going to test it out. So I'm going to hit the play button next to dev, and we'll see it's successfully built the site. Then you can control click, and you can see that it's loaded. So that's great. I'm then going to, you can either do control C to stop it, and it will ask you to hit Y or N for yes or no to terminate, or you can just shortcut it and hit the bin button here. Let's test out the build. And you can see the build's been successful, and we now have our public folder over here with the website built. Now there are a few things we can do to improve on this. The first one, I'm going to add it to both, so I'm going to hold down the Alt button and click at the end of both those scripts. Put in a space. Now if you put in a dash dash or hyphen hyphen GC, that stands for garbage collection. So after the build process is finished running, and that includes the development server, it does a build and then it starts the server, it's going to clean up all of the unused files in the resources folder, and that's mainly images. As you change images in your website and then generate new images, you're going to end up with a lot of unused files in that folder. Now the next thing I'm going to do is a feature for the development server, and it's hyphen hyphen disable fast render. And what that does is every time you change a file and save it, Hugo will do a complete rebuild. That way you know that what you're seeing on the screen is completely fresh and up to date. There's another command I'm going to put onto the build script, and that is to clean the destination directory before we build to it. That way you know that the directory is empty. You could do this manually yourself. You could write a script that does this, and a very common command for that is rimraf, and that's a cross-platform command for, you can delete the whole folder with that command. But we're going to use a built-in one. Put your hyphen hyphen in, and it's clean destination dir. So if you put it's camel cased like that. And we're also going to minify the output. So hyphen hyphen minify, and that will remove any extra spaces and other characters from your outputted HTML. It won't minify any of the scripts that you're running or style sheets or anything like that, but it will minify the HTML output. So we're going to save that. We'll test it out and we'll see what happens. So we'll start with our development script. And we'll see that looks like it's working. And you'll notice here, when it builds, there's the clean section, and that relates to GC, garbage collection. You'll never get anything cleaned unless you run this switch at the end, GC. All right, so that's working. I'm going to close that. I'm going to try out build. And build is looking great too. What we could do, for example, I'm going to copy this README file into the public folder. I'm going to go back. I'm going to remove the clean destination from build, and we'll see what happens. Notice it's still there. And that can be a problem, because if you change something on your site, you'll end up with the old files in the build directory. So I'm going to try it again. You'll notice it deleted that file for us, which is a really good way to go about it. So now we're going to install some packages to enable us to run Hugo as a cross-platform dependency. And that means if we save this project into a Git repository such as GitHub, and then you or someone else download it from GitHub, they can then install Hugo via NPM, and they'll have you or anyone else working on the project will have the exact version that was configured. So here we go. So we're going to run npm I is a shortcut for install, and the first package we're going to install is hugo-installer with a hyphen, and that will install Hugo. And then to run Hugo, we're going to use a script called exec-bin. Now it's really important you spell everything properly, because you can end up with some malware if you misspell some of these packages. It's a general thing. If you misspell a package, you might end up with malware. All right, so that's been installed. Let's have a look at our scripts. So we've got those two dependencies there. I put them in as dependencies. That way, if we do upload this project to Netlify will install Hugo. So the first thing we have to do is configure npm to install Hugo if we run npm install. Now to do that, we need a script called post install. So when you run npm install, it will install all of our packages, and it will then run post install. So we want to run Hugo installer, and then put -- version, and we're going to tell it to look in our package.json file, this file here, for the Hugo version that we're going to configure. So I'm going to write other dependencies .hugo, and we'll configure that in a moment. Now we're going to install the extended version of Hugo, and then destination will be node modules /.bin /Hugo, and that's where it's going to install the executable file for Hugo. Whether it's Windows, Mac, Linux, it will install the correct one for us automatically. That's what this package does. Now, for our version, we have to put a comma in first, a section called other dependencies, a colon, and then Hugo, and the current version of Hugo is 0.88.1, but you can get that information off the Hugo website. So you've got the most up-to-date version of Hugo. You do have to update it manually. You can't use this npm-check to update Hugo for you, because it's not an npm dependency. All right, so we'll save that. Let's now update our scripts. So before we're running Hugo server, now what we have to do, and I'm going to use Alt and click at the start of both of these, we're going to run exec-bin, put in a space, and we're going to tell exec-bin where the file is. Now, put a slash before Hugo, and we can paste that in. And we'll do it again for our build script. Put in a slash before Hugo and paste that in. And we'll save it and we'll test it. So we'll run our dev script. And that seems to have worked. So I'll just open the site up, and that's looking great. I'll close that. I'll run the build script. And it's looking great. It's building. And just so you know how this works, if you look in your node modules folder, this is where all the packages are downloaded to, under .bin, you'll see we've got a Hugo folder and then a hugo.exe, and that's what that path there refers to. exec-bin is executing that file there, and this is again a cross-platform package, just like hugo-installer. This will work on Windows, Mac, or Linux. And if you scroll down in your node modules folder, you'll see hugo-installer, we just installed. There is a lot of folders in here, and that's because they're dependencies of other packages that we've installed. So if you look down through here, we've got exec-bin, hugo-installer, and npm-check, and all these other folders that you didn't specify are dependencies of these packages. So they're other programs that these packages are using to function. Just like we're including packages in our website that we're writing, these packages included other programs. There's one more thing I'm going to show you, and that is building or running the development server for both files which are drafts, so draft pages in Hugo, and also future pages in Hugo. Because if you set the date for a page on Hugo to a future date, it won't display, or if you set draft to true, it won't display. So what we're going to do, I'm going to set it up for dev. I don't normally use it on build. So I'll copy dev, and we'll paste that below twice. And then on the first one, we're going to add a flag, and it's -- build future. And back here next to dev, I'm getting a warning coming up here, and that's because I've got, you'll see here, it's coming up telling me that I've got the same object key duplicated, but that's all right. So I'm going to put a colon in and then future. And for the one below, I'm going to put a colon in and draft. Now this is optional. I personally don't use it. And then -- build drafts. Again, camel cased, so you've got the capital D on drafts. Let's give that a go. We'll save it. We'll see we've got a few extra scripts down here. So we'll run and build future. And we'll just scroll up. And you can see it's pulling the script in there. And we're all good. We'll just check it. And it's looking great. So for example, let's have a look at our about page. We'll change the date. So go into content and about, and we'll see the date. So let's change that to a future date. So we've got 10-29. Close that process, and we'll just run a standard dev server. And you'll see it's logged an error, and that's because I've used the ref module to link the page, and it's not linking. So I'm just going to go back into my index page here under layouts. It must be in the content. There we go, comments. We'll just save that, try it again. There we go, open that up. And you'll see /about 404 error, cannot find it. I'm then going to close that down, do build future. /about, and you'll see that it works. The other use case is draft true. So we'll change the date back to a past date for the published date, so we don't have an issue with that. And then we're going to change our draft to true. So I'm just going to change back to a past date, and then draft to true. So we'll save that. Run dev draft, and we'll look at /about, and we'll see that it works. And then I'll run the standard dev server. And you'll see that it won't work. 404. Now what some people do is they combine these two into the one command, because we are kind of looking at drafts if it's for the future, but it's totally up to you. I personally don't use these much. There's one last thing which I use NPM for, and that is for debugging in Chrome. Now, we're going to copy our dev script. I'm going to place it below build. I'm going to call it start. These commands are copied off next.js. So I'm going to add a switch there, and that's render to disk. You can find all these on Hugo under the Hugo command. I'm then going to, so that will be just like running dev, except it'll be saving all the files into the public directory. So for that reason, I'm going to copy the clean destination dir, put that in there as well. That way it deletes the directory before it starts rendering to it. And there's one last thing I like to do in terms of debugging, and that's production mode. So I'm going to copy start, and below that I'm going to use production. And I'm going to tell Hugo -- environment production. Let's give it a go. So that one's working, and it saves the files into the public directory. That's great for debugging if you're using this section of Visual Studio. And then we'll try production. And with production, I also add minify, so I can check the size of the files. And we'll run production. It tells us here serving pages from, that's the folder, for either start or start production. And we're good. And if we go to view source, view page source, there are still new line characters, but all the other white space has been removed. And if you go to inspect, under sources, you'll be able to check exactly the size of the files, just like what's going to be, will be uploaded to your website. So if you later on you'll be learning about JavaScript and CSS files, and you'll be able to see the exact size of the files that you'll probably have minified. All right, thanks for watching the video, guys. As usual, if you have enjoyed the content, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications to get notified of new videos that I upload every week. And please, if you've got any constructive comments, leave some comments and suggestions below. And I'll also leave a link to this completed project so you can download it in case you've run into any trouble. Thank you.